The red dream of humanity Mars had always been humanity's ambition, a second home among the stars. The dream began in the late 21st century, with the first manned missions struggling to survive in domes no larger than a shopping mall. But through decades of relentless work, Mars was transformed. The first underground colonies were built beneath the iron-rich soil, safe from radiation and deadly dust storms. Terraforming projects accelerated, with vast machines pumping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere to thicken it. The planet was still cold, still barren, but pockets of green began to emerge. Bioengineered crops, oxygen-producing algae, hydroponic farms. By 2157, humanity had established 12 major colonies on Mars, each a self-sustaining metropolis connected by underground tunnels and magnetic transport rails. Earth had grown too crowded, too unstable, but Mars was a fresh start. That was the dream, the red dream. And like all dreams, it was destined to be shattered. First contact, or the first mistake. No one knew when they arrived. There was no dramatic entrance, no glowing alien ships descending from the heavens. There was only silence. It began with strange readings from deep beneath Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in the solar system. A mining crew had detected anomalous energy pulses beneath the Martian crust, something beyond human technology. Excitement spread through the scientific community. Was it an ancient alien relic? The remains of a long-extinct species? Then the miners disappeared, every last one. No distress calls, no struggle, just empty tunnels, still lit workstations, and excavation drills still humming, waiting for hands that would never return. The Martian Colonial Authority, MCA, launched an investigation. Drones sent into the tunnels relayed only static before being swallowed by the dark. The first military response unit, 16 well-trained soldiers, descended next. Only one came back, and what he said before dying changed everything. They were waiting for us. War begins and the red dust panic spread. The United Terran Government, UTG on Earth, demanded answers. The Martian Senate tried to downplay the situation, fearing mass hysteria among the settlers. Then Outpost Theta fell. A forward research station near the Valles Marineris, Outpost Theta, was the last known location of a scientific team studying the Olympus Mons signals. When their distress signal came through, the response was immediate. 2 military squads fully armed deployed within the hour. They arrived to find nothing but ruins, structures torn apart, walls scorched with an unknown energy signature. Scientists were gone. No bodies, no blood, just empty clothes scattered across the sand. Then the attack came. The first images sent back to Mars Command were blurry, fast-moving figures weaving through the dust storm. Not human, not machines. They hunted with precision, moving like shadows, striking with weapons that disintegrated flesh but left armor untouched. The soldiers fought. They fought hard, and they died. Within days, colonies began falling, one by one. Cities built over, centuries burned in minutes. What we knew about them, Earth's military leaders scrambled to understand their enemy. Intelligence reports from survivors painted a grim picture. Bipedal, humanoid-like creatures, but taller with elongated limbs and hardened exoskeletons. Technology beyond human comprehension. Weapons that bent light, projectiles that passed through, metal as if it were water. No communication, no mercy. Some believed they were ancient Martian life forms, awakened by human excavation. Others thought they were off-world invaders watching us for years before deciding to strike. No one knew the truth, but one thing was clear. Mars was no longer ours. The fall of Earth's first colony, the battle for New Horizon, was humanity's first real attempt to fight back. New Horizon was the oldest and largest Martian colony, a self-sustaining city of over 200,000 people. The UTG declared it a fortress world, deploying orbital defenses and thousands of soldiers from Earth's Space Marine Division. It lasted 6 hours. The aliens did not attack from above. They came from beneath. They dug through the ground, erupting into the city's core like a plague of locusts. The first wave overran security forces in minutes. Civilians ran, screaming, trampling one another in the glass-covered streets as the aliens tore through them. The Martian sky turned red, not from dust, but from the fires of a dying city. Final. Words of the introduction. The war had begun. Humanity had fought wars before, against itself, against nature, against the cold abyss of space. But this was a war for survival, a war for Mars, a war for the future of the human race. A fight humanity wasn't ready. For Mars had been a frontier of innovation, not war. The colonies were built for research, commerce, and expansion, not large-scale planetary defense. When the invasion began, Earth's United Terran Government, UTG, reacted with bureaucratic hesitation, debating whether it was a minor uprising or an actual war. By the time they realized the truth, New Horizon had already fallen. The loss was catastrophic. Nearly 200,000 civilians were gone, vaporized, in moments or dragged into underground tunnels, never seen again. Entire families disappeared, their names wiped from every registry as if they had never existed. Those who did survive spoke of unimaginable horrors. Alien creatures ripping through human flesh as if it were paper, unarmed civilians disintegrated by weapons that left nothing but shadows burned into the walls. And worst of all, the silence. No demands, no warnings, no negotiations. These creatures weren't just fighting humanity. They were erasing it. Earth reacts. Too late, Earth's leaders, desperate to contain the panic, declared a full military intervention. A massive fleet was assembled, warships, supply freighters, and tens of thousands of soldiers from Earth's Space Marine Division. Humanity had waged war against itself for centuries. They had weapons designed to level cities, fleets built to control entire nations. They thought they were ready. They were wrong. The first Martian counterattack, codenamed Operation Crimson Shield, was supposed to be a swift victory. Retake New Horizon, establish a defensive line, push the aliens back. It turned into a massacre. The fall of the 9th Fleet, the 9th UTG Fleet, entered Mars orbit, ready to deploy thousands of ground troops. They moved in tight formation, their cannons locked on the ruins of New Horizon. Then, the sky tore open. Without warning, something emerged from the dust storms. Not ships, not fighters. Something organic. Black, pulsating shapes as large as warships burst from the Martian surface, launching projectiles that twisted mid-air, cutting through hulls like molten knives. The lead warship, the UNS Dauntless, took the first hit. Its shields collapsed instantly. The crew had no time to react. The ship split apart, breaking into fiery debris. Bodies sucked into the void. Panic spread through the fleet. The aliens didn't fight like humans. They had no battle formations, no tactics that Earth's best commanders could predict. They attacked in swarming waves, their weapons slicing through steel and flesh alike. In less than an hour, the entire fleet was gone. Thousands of lives, billions in military assets, erased. The soldiers meant to retake Mars never even made it to the surface. The last cities of Mars, a desperate stand with the 9th Fleet destroyed, Mars was left defenseless. Only 3 major colonies remained: Artemis Prime, Kessler Station, and Nova Alexandria. The leaders of these colonies had no illusions. They were next. With no reinforcements coming, humanity's last Martian strongholds prepared for the end. Artemis Prime fortified its outer domes, turning them into high-energy barriers powered by nuclear reactors. Kessler Station, an underground facility, rigged its tunnels with high-yield explosives. If they were going to die, they'd take the aliens with them. Nova Alexandria, the last remaining spaceport, sent a final distress signal to Earth. This is Nova Alexandria. We are the last stronghold on Mars. The enemy is unstoppable. If you hear this, do not send help. There is no help. There is only war. And then, they waited. What are we fighting? Scientists worked frantically trying to understand the enemy. The name they were given, the Xiphos. Through the wreckage of battles, humanity managed to recover alien corpses for study. What they found was horrifying. Their bodies were engineered for war. Hardened exoskeletons immune to small arms fire. They had no vocal cords. They didn't speak, didn't negotiate, only killed. Their technology was biological. Their ships weren't made of metal but grown from organic material, pulsing like living things. They never took prisoners. Those captured were never seen again. It became clear these weren't invaders. They were the true inhabitants of Mars. Humanity hadn't discovered Mars. They had trespassed, and the Xiphos were taking it back. The first human victory, barely Artemis Prime, was the first city to fall, but it was also where humanity finally fought back. When the Xiphos breached the city's barriers, they expected another easy slaughter. What they didn't expect was human ingenuity. A team of engineers had discovered something crucial. While the Xiphos' bodies were nearly indestructible, their nervous systems were hypersensitive to electromagnetism. They felt pain in ways humans couldn't comprehend. The defenders of Artemis Prime overloaded the city's power grid and unleashed an electromagnetic pulse so strong it collapsed the entire district. For the first time, the Xiphos screamed. For the first time, they ran. Humanity had been on the defensive for too long. But in that moment they learned something important. The Xiphos could be hurt, and that meant they could be killed. The war was far from over. Earth had failed its first battle. Mars had lost millions. But now humanity had hope. For the first time, red dust was rising, not in defeat but in defiance. The war changes, humanity adapts. The Battle of Artemis Prime had proven one thing: the Xiphos weren't invincible. For months humanity had been retreating, losing entire cities to the alien onslaught, but now they had a weakness to exploit. Weaponizing the enemy's weakness, the discovery of the EMP weapon, the electromagnetic pulse, EMP, had caused massive pain and confusion among the Xiphos. Their bodies, as advanced as they were, relied on a biomechanical nervous system that was highly sensitive to electromagnetic interference. Scientists on Earth, desperate to turn the tide, rushed to develop a new arsenal. Pulse rifles, guns, modified to emit small EMP bursts, stunning Xiphos warriors in battle. Tesla mines, magnetic explosives designed to overload their nervous systems. Ion cannons, heavy artillery mounted on Martian defenses, unleashing concentrated electromagnetic shockwaves. The first counterstrike was launched against a Xiphos stronghold near Olympus Mons. What had once been the center of their mysterious underground activity was now a war zone. Human forces stormed, the tunnels using EMP weaponry. For the first time, they weren't being slaughtered. For the first time, they were winning. But victory came at a cost. The rise of the Martian resistance. Not all humans on Mars were willing to follow Earth's orders. For decades, Martian settlers had been treated as second-class citizens by the United Terran Government, UTG. Their colonies were taxed but underfunded, their voices ignored by Earth's leaders. Now, with war raging, the UTG's response had been slow and ineffective. Some Martians saw this as an opportunity. They didn't want Earth's help anymore. General Saul Mercer, former head of Mars security forces, declared independence from Earth. He and his militia seized control of Kessler Station, one of the last remaining strongholds. The Red Blades, a guerrilla faction, began launching rogue operations against both the Xiphos and Earth's military. They saw Mars as their home and didn't trust Earth's leadership to protect it. Tensions between Earth's forces and Martian separatists exploded into small skirmishes. While humanity fought the Xiphos, they were also fighting themselves. The Xiphos retaliate. Humanity's first victory was short-lived. The Xiphos adapted just as fast. Where they had once relied on brute force and surprise attacks, now they changed their tactics. They started using their environment, luring human forces into the deepest Martian caves, cutting off escape routes, and striking with terrifying precision. Then came the worst realization of all. The Xiphos had, A hive mind captured footage from drone scouts showed something disturbing. The Xyphos were learning. They analyzed EMP weapons. Some Xyphos even survived electromagnetic attacks, their bodies slowly adapting. They coordinated better. Instead of chaotic swarms, they moved in tactical formations, anticipating human strategies. They began using human technology against them. Reports emerged of soldiers going missing, only for their own weapons to be used against their comrades days later. The war had become a deadly game of adaptation. The revelation: Mars wasn't humanity's first victim. Deep in the underground, ruins beneath Olympus Mons, an Earth scientist named Dr. Evelyn Rains made a terrifying discovery. The Xyphos weren't the first species to fight for Mars. Buried beneath the red soil, hidden in ancient caverns, were the remains of another species. Their bodies were petrified, fossilized in combat poses, their weapons still in hand. They had fought the Xyphos, and they had lost. The implications were horrifying. How many species had come before humanity, thinking they could take Mars? How many had vanished into history, wiped out without a trace? For the first time, humanity questioned its place in the cosmos. They weren't conquerors. They were next in line for extinction. 5. The infiltration of Nova Alexandria. The war escalates Nova. Alexandria, the last functional spaceport on Mars, was humanity's only hope for bringing in reinforcements from Earth. It had become a fortress, protected by the most advanced defenses known to mankind. Yet in the dead of night, the Xyphos breached the walls. How? No alarms were triggered, no attacks were seen coming. The first sign of invasion was when the guards on duty were found slaughtered, their bodies arranged in eerie, ritualistic patterns. Then, the power failed. The Blackout Massacre. With Nova Alexandria's energy grid offline, chaos erupted. Xyphos, warriors emerged from the shadows, cutting down soldiers and civilians alike. Ships were destroyed before they could evacuate survivors. Humans fought back fiercely, but for every Xyphos killed, 2 more appeared. The only reason Nova Alexandria wasn't completely lost was because of one man, Colonel Adrian Voss. The Martian Gambit, a desperate counterattack. Colonel Voss knew there was only one way to stop the invasion. He had to detonate the city's core reactor. If the Xyphos wanted Mars, they'd have to take it from the ashes. Voss gathered the last surviving engineers and armed the reactor's failsafe system. Before the Xyphos could stop them, the explosion tore through Nova Alexandria, leveling the spaceport. Nova Alexandria was gone. The last hope of evacuating Mars had been destroyed. The war had entered its final phase. Humanity had 2 choices now: fight to the bitter end or be wiped from existence. The last stand. Battle for Mars. Humanity had fought wars before. Against itself, against nature, against the cold, unrelenting void of space. But this was different. This was the end game. With Nova Alexandria destroyed, there was no way out. The few remaining human forces, Earth's surviving Marines, Martian rebels, and scattered civilians, were left with one choice: fight and die well. The last stronghold, Kessler Station, the final human stronghold, sat buried beneath 2 kilometers of Martian rock. Originally a research outpost, it had now become a war bunker. Here the last survivors gathered. Earth's military, now leaderless, their generals dead or missing. Martian rebels, fighting not just for survival, but for Mars itself. Scientists and engineers, desperate to finish one last weapon that could end the war, or end everything. The Omega device, a risky gamble. Deep in the lowest levels of Kessler Station, a team of engineers worked on something called the Omega device. It was not a bomb. It was a frequency disruptor, a machine designed to emit a planet-wide EMP wave, powerful enough to fry every Xyphos neural link at once. If it worked, the Xyphos would be crippled. If it failed, it could wipe out Mars's fragile atmosphere, making the planet uninhabitable for centuries. It was a last resort, and they had no other choice. The Xyphos' final attack, the siege of Kessler Station. The Xyphos knew humanity was on its last legs. There, forces descended upon Kessler Station in waves tunneling through rock, breaking through ancient lava tubes, and surrounding the base like a swarm of locusts. There were no screams, no battle cries. The Xiphos did not speak. They only killed. Human forces fought with everything they had. Pulse rifles burned red hot, firing EMP rounds at the Xiphos warriors. Tesla mines detonated, sending arcs of electricity through the alien ranks. Martian rebels launched guerrilla strikes, using old mining tunnels to flank the enemy, but it wasn't enough. For every Xiphos killed, more emerged from the dust. The station's outer defenses collapsed. Then the barracks, then the hangars. With hours left before total annihilation, the Omega device was activated. The final stand, a human sacrifice. The Omega device could not be remotely triggered. Someone had to stay behind to manually power it up. Colonel Adrian Voss, the man who had detonated Nova Alexandria, volunteered. "I've run from too many battles. This time I'll stand." As the last surviving soldiers held the Xiphos back, Voss entered the control chamber, his hands shaking as he activated the device's core. A deep hum filled the station. The machine charged up. Voss watched the monitors as the Xiphos stormed the base. "For Mars," he whispered. Then he flipped the switch. The Omega pulse. The end of the war. The sky turned white. A massive electromagnetic shockwave burst from Kessler Station, racing across the surface of Mars, filling the atmosphere with crackling energy. The Xiphos froze. Their weapons flickered and died. Their bodies convulsed, overloaded by the surge of electromagnetism, and then, one by one, they fell. From the battlefields to the deepest caverns beneath Olympus Mons, the Xiphos collapsed like puppets with their strings cut. It was over. Mars was silent once more. The aftermath, victory at a cost. Kessler Station was destroyed. The few remaining survivors emerged from the wreckage, stepping out into the Martian landscape now littered with thousands of Xiphos corpses. The war was won, but at what cost? Colonel Voss was gone. 90% of Mars's human population had been wiped out. The planet was in ruins. Earth celebrated the victory, but those who had fought, those who had survived, they knew the truth. This wasn't humanity's triumph. This was humanity's warning, because somewhere out there, beyond Mars, beyond the stars, something else was watching, and it would come next. Mars belonged to humanity, but for how long? The red dust had risen once before, and one day, it would rise again. The price of victory, the war for Mars was over, but no one felt like celebrating. Humanity had won not through strength, but through desperation. The Omega device had crippled the Xiphos, severing their neural connections and rendering them lifeless. But in doing so, it had nearly destroyed Mars itself. The terraforming projects were in ruins. The atmosphere, already fragile, was thinning again. The once thriving Martian cities? Now nothing but empty husks buried beneath red dust. 90% of the population had died. For those who survived, there were two choices: stay and rebuild, leave and never return. Earth's United Terran Government, UTG, made the decision for them. Humanity had left Mars, but Mars had not forgotten humanity. One day the red dust would rise again, and when it did, Earth would not be ready. What do you think? The war for Mars may be over, for now. But was it truly a victory? Humanity won the battle but lost a planet. The Xiphos were defeated but not destroyed. The red dust of Mars has settled. But for how long? What do you think would happen if humanity returned to Mars? Would the Xiphos rise again? Was the war just the beginning of something worse? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Mars was abandoned. The Great Evacuation. With the last operational spaceports destroyed, humanity had one final mission: evacuate the survivors before Mars became uninhabitable. The UTG sent warships, not for battle, but for rescue. Martian survivors, scientists, Soldiers and civilians were loaded onto the ships in waves, their faces hollow from weeks of starvation, exhaustion, and grief. But not everyone left. Some refused. The Red Blades, the Martian rebels, saw this as their home. They chose to stay, even if it meant a slow death. Others believed the Xiphos weren't truly dead, that they were merely dormant, waiting. Some, broken by war, simply walked into the desert, never to be seen again. By the time the last ship departed, Mars was silent. The truth about the Xiphos, a lingering fear before leaving, a final scientific team was sent to examine the dead Xiphos. What they found was unsettling. Their bodies were still warm, their exoskeletons hadn't decayed, their neural pathways were still active, just quiet. The Xiphos weren't dead, they were sleeping. Humanity hadn't won the war, they had merely paused it. Earth reacts, a cover-up. The UTG did what governments always do. They rewrote history. Official reports stated that Mars was a failed colony. The war was classified. The Xiphos were labeled as a Martian anomaly, not an alien species. Survivors were sworn to secrecy or silenced. The true story of the war would never be known to the public. Earth moved on. The final transmission, a warning, years later. A mysterious signal was intercepted from Mars. It was garbled, distorted but chillingly familiar. A voice, a whisper, a warning. They are waking. The message ended. The signal source, Olympus Mons. The place where it had all begun.